This shell has a slightly bent shape, as the name suggests, namely the humpbacked conch, where one side of the shape is slightly asymmetrical, unlike other snails. The main body whorl is often described as being somewhat flattened centrally, and having a thickened left side which forms an axial bulge at the dorsal margin. In this scallop, the shell is divided into two colors in one tail. One side is pink to reddish brown, but rarely red, and on the other side it is white and the shell is thin, measuring 6 to 7 centimeters and rarely 8 centimeters or more. If you look closely, the spire is not truly absent. It is simply enclosed by the final growth of the body whorl. This architectural choice gives the shell its characteristic polished, uniform and streamlined look, which is an adaptation for its burrowing lifestyle. Giant snails are identical hard and tough shells, but the difference is that this snail, although large in size, is fragile with a maximum size of up to 28 cm. And also, this is one of the largest snails that doesn't have operculum for its defense, because this snail secretes sulfuric acid in its addictive saliva, which is as much as 2 to 5%. In the Philippines, it is known as swaki, globally known as collector urchin, and is consumed, and its test is very popular among tillandsia lovers to be used as a container so that it looks like a hanging jellyfish. The size of the test can reach 15 centimeters, but is commonly found with a maximum size of 85 millimeters, and above that, sizes are starting to become rarer. This snail lacks these prominent varices, or they are completely absent except for a very weak terminal one. Its shell is smooth and highly inflated, often described as having a tunnel-like form. Popular among aquascapers to eradicate snail pests in their freshwater microhabitats because these snails eat pest snails that are smaller than themselves. It is not impossible that they eating ornamental aquarium snails that are smaller than itself. The most characteristic and functionally important feature of this is the deep, V-shaped notch or slit found on the shoulder of the whorl, just below the suture, the line separating the whorls. This feature is called the anal sinus or torrid notch. When the shell is viewed, the anterior, front margin of the shell is oriented at a significant angle to the posterior back margin. The whole shell looks like it has been deliberately wrenched or warped, hence the names twisted and propeller. One of the land snails whose operculum is the most unique because it adopts the operculum shape that is usually found in sea snails or multi-layered operculum, and its distribution is also quite narrow, even though it can be found in some parts of Southeast Asia, including Indonesia and also the Pacific. The shell displays an almost unlimited range of motifs, including clean geometric designs like zigzag lightning bolts, neat checkerboards, intricate ladder patterns, and crisp spiral bands. The patterns are usually rendered in stark contrast, typically in jet black over a white, yellow, or deep purple background. This sharp contrast makes the tiny detailed patterns jump out visually, creating a stunning effect even on a shell that rarely exceeds 10 millimeters. This sea urchin is a popular sea urchin among saltwater aquascapers because of its almost ball shape and tuxedo-like appearance. And also the shell is very beautiful, with variations of red or green, and there is definitely a black part which is its characteristic, although the one in Japan is even more polymorphic. shows a brownish-black marbling pattern and also triangular shapes where there are several parts that are white polygonal rectangles, and all of it is arranged in a mathematical pattern. But behind all that, this snail is one of the most poisonous snails in the world, which can endanger humans but is not as deadly as the geographic cone snail or textile cone snail, but never take or touch the living thing because we don't know what harpoon it is. The beauty is found in the way these lines cross and interact, creating a texture that is geometrically precise and highly regular across the shell's minuscule surface, revealing the intricate and also a very unique microsculpture that cannot be imitated by humans. The snail whose uniqueness is only the snail is left-handed/sinistral. The rest of this snail is hated by aquascapers because it is a snail that reproduces very quickly and also has the potential to be extremely invasive or overpopulation and eat aquatic plants, although this snail can also be an algae eater. It has a unique shape with a boral symmetry that looks like 4 when in fact it is 5, and also its thickness is very minimal like an eggshell. The shell itself is smaller than the European version and is consumed in the Philippines, and the name is dapa in the Mar India Fafamne. Philippines, or the global common name, is keeled heart urchin, but this irregularity make this sea urchin is extremely unique from the internal and external. When alive, the test features striking, solid iridescent blue or green lines that run along the interambulacral areas and around the periproct, the area surrounding the anus. These markings are composed of special light-sensitive structures called iridophores. This sea urchin spines are also very long and very sharp. One of the primitive oysters that still lives today, the shell is laced with microscopic chambers, vesicles, and chalky deposits, sometimes called mocrit. This gives the shell its common name, honeycomb oyster or foam oyster. The shell grows to be one of the largest and thickest oysters, sometimes exceeding 300 millimeters in diameter. If it were a solid block of calcium carbonate, it would be prohibitively heavy. This test is a bit strange because approaching the apex or apical system, the shape can be flat or tilted to the right or left. Unlike modern sea urchin tests, the more the test goes towards the top, the more it becomes domed. This sea urchin is a sea urchin that is found in the sea urchin order, all species of which are extinct except this species, and is the only remaining species. The shell is distorted, and the strangest feature is the 4 or 5 prominent varices that make the shell look lumpy, uneven, and reinforced in cycles. This snail does not grow rapidly, but it stops and forms a thick, defensive varix wall to fight predators, and as a result the shell is asymmetrical and this snail camouflaged with its hairy periostracum. On the aboral side of the test, the spines are grouped in a way that leaves 5 distinct, naked zones exposed in a striking star-like pattern. These areas contain the iridophores, which often display a natural blue, matcha, light matcha, or purplish color on the otherwise pale test. This snail is the only land snail whose shell can be sinistral or dextral, and this snail is very beautiful in its motif, and this snail lives in trees and is a snail that some species are endemic. The snail uses its foot and proboscis to search, select, and meticulously maneuver objects from the seafloor, including dead shells, pebbles, coral fragments, sometimes still alive, and even human debris like glass or bottle caps, or in rare cases, small snack plastic packages can be attached onto its shell shoulder, and all this for its camouflage. This snail is a snail that is usually used for handicrafts or art because of its very beautiful motifs, and also the polymorphism of this snail is also extreme. So, if you are not careful in distinguishing one individual from another, you might think that they are different species. A strange and cool side effect of its structure is that the black pigmented areas of the shell are often more resistant to erosion by boring algae than the white areas. On very old shells, the black zigzag pattern can actually appear slightly raised in relief, giving the shell a naturally carved texture. This snail is included in the Lazarus taxon because this snail should have been extinct but was found again in the Sumatra Sea alive and is still being studied to see whether it is the same species or not. This snail has flanges that are similar to razor blades, and this snail forms a unique silhouette that resembles a ladder and is a Wenteltrap ladder. This snail is quite rare to find in Indonesia. In fact, it doesn't exist. The size is also small, only 0.9 to 2 centimeters. The spines are typically developed more acutely than in other species, and they're long. Curved nature makes them appear to project strongly along the main axis of the shell's spiral, hence the common name center horn murex. This is the largest species in its family, which is dominated by microsnails, and this snail is the largest parasitic snail in the world. This snail stealthily approaches its host, often a polychaete worm or another mollusk, plunges the stylet into the host tissue, and injects digestive enzymes and potentially paralyzing compounds to liquefy the tissue. Most clams have a rather hard shell even for the smallest ones, but this clam is different. It is translucent and also incredibly thin at a size of up to 25 millimeters. And this clam adapts its fragile shell to dig deep in the soft silty sand where it lives. This is a snail that can sometimes confuse people about the rotation of its shell because its shell looks dextral to sinistral as evidenced by its sinistral organs, and this snail's habit is to move more often dextrally. The snail uses the venomous dart to quickly subdue its worm prey. The shell's architecture, including its often deep water habitat, 20 meters to 346 meters, facilitates this stealthy, precise chemical attack. Two of the most abapical front teeth often bracket the stromboid notch, the indentation that accommodates the snail's long eye stalk. This means the snail has built a fortress wall right around its most vulnerable sensory organ.